Maybe you filed your taxes after the due date, or maybe you owed and you paid your taxes after the due date. In either case, the IRS says you owe penalties and you're wondering, is there any way that I can get out of these? Well, I'm going to tell you 2 ways to get the IRS to forgive your penalties and how to request the forgiveness. Let's go. Welcome to Tax Chit Chat, the place where we talk all things tax all the time. So the IRS is allowed to charge a taxpayer penalties when they fail to do certain things, like file or pay their taxes on time. We discussed many of these in this video right here, so make sure you check it out after watching this one, okay? But as far as this video goes, we're going to talk about how to get the IRS to forgive the penalties associated with the 3 most common items people are penalized for: the failure to file, failure to pay, and failure to deposit penalties. And you request forgiveness by asking for either first-time abatement or asserting reasonable cause. First-time penalty abatement. First-time penalty abatement is the IRS equivalent of the Monopoly get-out-of-jail-free card. If certain requirements are met, it's a one-time thing that the IRS will grant you, usually. But that's for us tax pros to know and for you taxpayers to find out. Individuals and businesses may request FTA for any failure to file, failure to pay, or failure to deposit penalty. To qualify for the FTA waiver, a taxpayer must meet the following criteria. Filing compliance. They must have filed all required returns and can't have any outstanding requests for a return from the IRS. Payment compliance. They must have paid or arranged to pay all taxes due. This can be through an installment agreement if the payments are current. Clean penalty history. You cannot have any prior penalties except a possible estimated tax penalty for the preceding 3 years. So basically the IRS is saying, hey, if you've been good up until this point and all of a sudden something bad happened, the policy behind this procedure is to reward taxpayers for having a clean compliance history. Everyone is entitled to one mistake. But what if you don't qualify for FTA? Reasonable cause criteria. Sometimes the taxpayer can get out of a penalty if they had grounds, or what is known as a reasonable cause in IRS speak. Reasonable cause is based on all the facts and circumstances applicable to your situation, and the IRS will consider any reason which establishes that you use all ordinary business care and prudence to meet your federal tax obligations, but nevertheless you weren't unable to do so. Now, things that typically work well under reasonable cause include fire, casualty, natural disaster, or some other disturbance, inability to obtain records. Maybe you lost them or they were destroyed in that fire that we just mentioned. Death, serious illness, incapacitation, or unavoidable absence of the taxpayer or a member of the taxpayer's immediate family. Written or oral advice from either the IRS or from a tax advisor. Now, things that on their own, absent any of the prior items that I mentioned, that will not work typically include, I made a mistake, ignorance of the law, and forgetfulness. The IRS doesn't care that you forgot that you were supposed to file your taxes on time. So now that we know the 2 ways to get penalty relief, how do you make the request? How to request relief. The first option is to call the IRS. You can either call them at 1-800-829-1040 or the number listed on the notice or letter that you received, if in fact you actually received one. The IRS personnel who takes the call should be able to pull up your account, determine if the FTA criteria are met, and apply the waiver during the call. They can also use the Reasonable Cause Assistance or RCA tool to see if reasonable cause criteria are met if you're not using FTA. Now, instead of calling the IRS, you can write to the IRS to request FTA or abatement for reasonable cause. To do this, you'll respond to the letter you received and you'll want to include all the relevant information in your request, like your name, social security number or EIN of the company, tax year or period, tax form, and penalty type and amount. You also want to lay out all the facts and circumstances that led you to not be able to meet your tax obligations, like what happened and when did it happen? What facts and circumstances prevented you from filing your return or paying your tax during the period of time that you did not file or pay your taxes timely? How did the facts and circumstances affect your ability to file and or pay your taxes or perform your other day-to-day responsibilities? Now, both of the methods I just laid out are technically informal in nature. If you want to formally request abatement or you already paid the penalty and you want to get the money back, you'll want to file Form 843, Claim for Refund, and Request for Abatement. I've put a link to this form in the description of this video below, so make sure you check it out if the other 2 methods didn't work. Other considerations. So this is where I give you some inside shop talk for free. If you're a tax professional, make sure that you check out these 2 IRM references about RCA and FTA, as they can help you make the best case for your client. If you're a taxpayer, know that calling the IRS is often the preferred approach to request FTA, as often penalties can be removed quickly during a phone call. However, at times the penalty amount may be too high for the IRS to abate over the phone. If so, write a letter to the IRS to request FTA. Additionally, if the IRS abates the penalties over the phone, it's advisable to write a letter to the IRS to confirm the conversation, and you're going to want to include the date of the call, the agent's name, and the agent's identification number. FTA only applies to one tax year or period. If a request for penalty relief is being considered for 2 or more years or tax periods, and the earliest tax year or period meets the FTA criteria, then basically the penalty relief is going to only apply to the earliest tax year or period. If the IRS doesn't grant penalty relief, then consider taking your request to appeals. Appeals may make a different decision based on other factors, such as having to fight this all out in tax court. And remember, while each case is very different, if you don't ask for relief, then the IRS will never give it to you, so it doesn't hurt to ask. A person can possibly save thousands of dollars in penalties, often with a simple phone call or a letter to the IRS. If you want to know how as much as 40 to 60% of a person's tax balance can be due to penalties and interest, then make sure you watch this video next. And until we meet again, remember to keep earning, keep learning, and just like that, this chat is adjourned.